Chapter 7. The Problem of an Expanding Wealth Gap.
So the wealth gap is expanding to extreme levels not seen since right before the Great Depression. But why exactly is this a bad thing? A widening wealth gap means the playing field is not level. If the playing field is off kilter, then the American dream erodes. When those who work, study, and persist with equal determination are not rewarded fairly, and correspondingly, when those who work extra are not proportionally rewarded, then political unrest follows. Simply look at other nations that have wealth gaps similar to the U.S., or worse. They are almost all located in developing nations and are almost all distinguished by political instability, ruthless political repression, or both. Think of nations such as Colombia, Peru, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, or Russia, all countries which feature wealth gaps that we have either equaled or surpassed here in the U.S. Lawrence Michel of the Economic Policy Institute has illustrated this idea, pointing out,
"It's a shame that we have as much or more poverty now than we did 40 years ago, that the middle class is earning somewhat higher wages, but not in proportion to what they've increased their productivity over that time. And what this does is it adds to division. It hurts our democracy. It hurts the upward mobility of the children of these families."
The reality of income inequality can be more deeply understood by representing the statistical data around the Lorenz curve. In a hypothetical societal environment, absolute equality is represented by a line across the graph at 45 degrees, which would indicate that every household has the same income. However, in the U.S., we have a Lorenz curve where the narrower margins at the top of the income scale own much larger proportions of the total national wealth. This cannot be sustained. To see this graph of the Lorenz curve, go to the disruptingtaxes.org website. More specifically, economists can take the data of the Lorenz curve and calculate a figure called the Gini coefficient, a percentage designed to show how positively or negatively the wealth inequality of a nation has manifested itself. In the hypothetical realm of equal financial prosperity, the Gini coefficient is 0. If a country has a Gini coefficient of 0, that country theoretically has full equality of financial prosperity. A country with complete inequality has a Gini coefficient of 1. Today, the U.S. has an estimated Gini coefficient of 0.488, the highest among the group of 7 G7 nations. This is a very troubling sign, and the unequal tax system we employ ensures that the Gini coefficient will continue to increase. The correlation between the rising burden on middle-class salaries, which coincides with the shrinking burden on corporations, and the expansion of the wealth gap has now reached a level where it demonstrates causation. On the other hand, the goal is not a line of equilibrium. The U.S. aspires to be a dynamic meritocracy, and so there will and should be inequalities based on work and effort. However, an enlarging Gini coefficient reveals that systemic problems and tax system inefficiencies are strangling hard work. To make matters worse, we have now entered a vicious cycle in the tax system, where the ultra-wealthy, with legal special interests and tax sheltering benefits, exert more and more political influence, and in turn create additional systemic rules that allow them to gain even more wealth. This can be seen directly in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017, where the wealthy and corporations received the majority of benefits under the new law. These taxation errors are compounded by the disproportionate financial influence of the wealthy within the U.S. elective system, especially evident since the major U.S. Supreme Court ruling of Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, which effectually allowed people and companies to spend unlimited money on elections. Consider that 10% of the population has over 80% of the nation's wealth at its disposal when it comes to influencing elections. This is a clear recipe for civil disorder, and the violence is not hypothetical. Over the past several years, we have all seen unprecedented unrest boil over. In 2017, a gunman attacked Republican Congress members on a baseball field. In 2018, a man mailed bombs to Democrats. In 2020, there was an attempt to kidnap the governor of Michigan. And then in 2021, the U.S. Capitol was breached for the first time since the War of 1812. Only this time, the assault was carried out by Americans themselves. These are not isolated and unrelated incidents and are not the signs of a healthy society. When the economic and political playing fields are badly tilted, then people too often resort to extreme ideologies and measures.